Many were concerned over the sudden drop, raising speculation that investors were withdrawing hot money after seeing initial election results. For his views, we're joined now by BDO Unibank's Jonathan Ravelas. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. One of the top stories right now, particularly for the markets, is JP Morgan Global Research downgrading the Philippines to underweight and ranked it last in the order of preference in ASEAN among the major Southeast Asian markets. How concerned are you about capital flight?
Oh, well, I'm actually not. It's just that over the past weeks, this is more merely driven by the impact of the higher inflation and the higher interest rates driven by the US Fed. So this is actually the main concern of the markets today at this point in time.
But of course, you have the likes
That's
of
why
twin deficits that they mentioned in their report, higher inflation, slower government spending in the quarters after the election, which is transition pain, high public debt, risk of valuation and potential earnings growth disappointment. Do you agree with their concerns on what the next administration, the problems the administration next faces?
Well, I tend to agree with everything. I think it compared to President Duterte's assumption to office, which was eventually a bed of roses, the next administration would actually be having a very tough environment at this time, especially when you have the global environment having higher inflation and higher interest rates brought about by policy normalization. So the key challenge really is the uncertainty of more clearer plans of the government, particularly as it addressed the social, the health, and eventually economic issues that were already mentioned by JP Morgan.
All right. You mentioned about clear plans and a whole lot of other issues, tackling rising poverty, strengthening healthcare, dealing with inflation, which is a key issue right now, and managing debt, which is close to 13 trillion pesos. Does the former Senator Bongbong Marcos have clear plans, concrete strategies to deal with these serious issues during his campaign?
Well, basically, his campaign was more of broad strokes. So basically, he talked about, and again, it was very ambitious, talked about build, 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 the continuation of infrastructure spending. He talked about jobs, 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 and eventually prices, prices, prices. So again, there's a big difference between candidate X and President X. So it's a matter of perspective. So hopefully, in the coming days, we will probably hear what his plans are. And until such time these plans are laid down to probably address the social, health, and eventually the economic issues, then investors will remain sidelined till we get to see a much clearer plan of their plan of action.
And Jonathan, from the supporters of Bongbong Marcos, you've seen his inner circle. I mean, after analyzing all these candidates' economic positions, who would likely make up his economic team? What characteristics are investors looking for in his economic team?
Okay, I think over the last two presidents that we have, President Duterte and President Noynoy Aquino, we've seen a characteristic that the economic team is actually led by one person. Mm-hmm. So he was there from beginning to end. So people is policy. So whoever he places to the economic team will most likely be the one to, the economic team is like the glue that holds the Philippine economy. So they ensure that we navigate through these rough waters.
So I guess in the Duterte administration, it was Secretary Dominguez, right? And in the Pinoy administration, it was Cesar Purisima?
Yes.
So who do you think will be the Cesar Purisima and the Dominguez in the Bongbong Marcos administration?
Well, I guess it's anybody's guess at this point in time. There are a lot of names that are being floated.
Like?
So,
like who? Jonathan?
Eventually we've seen PNB banker president, no? Vic Veloso.
Who else?
And then one is eventually his classmate, Walter Wasmer.
Uh-huh. Do you think that these are the right people to lead the finance team, to lead the economic team, and are respected by the international investor community?
Well, I think they are. Especially Walter comes from the biggest bank, and the experience of Wick in the foreign bank and has international exposure. Both them are capable of eventually handling the financial affairs of the
All
country.
right, we saw that in the Duterte administration, President Duterte had the hands-off policy in terms of the economic policy, and he left it to Secretary Dominguez to run the show. Will Bongbong Marcos be involved very seriously and in-depth in the economic policies of his administration?
Well, I think if we eventually follow the steps of President Marcos Sr., we've actually seen that he's been very cohesive in talking to his team. No, he started all of these technocrats, so most likely he will also have a hand in trying to discuss the plans. And during the campaign, there were times that he mentioned of certain economic plans that were used before. But again, it still needs clarity. Like he talked about OPSF and eventually the plans of the former Marcos administration. But again, they were all touched lightly. But again, what we need to hear now is basically hear them as concrete plans on how to address these things. Just like President Duterte's 10-point agenda.
Thank you so much for your insights. Jonathan Ravelas from BDO Unibank.